Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1154 of our daily content grind. And we are basing today's video off of a bit of a leak that we got. We'll talk about it a little bit more come Monday in the news roundup. But for now, it did kind of inspire a little bit of discussion in my brain. We've talked about the 13 primes, and I've given you kind of like an overview of who they are. But now that we have full official confirmation that the 13 primes are all getting new toys for the next trilogy of figures and generations, we need to figure out what they're going to be. Because I don't think we've ever really sat down and kind of figured out what the primes would transform into. So some of them are so weird in design. What do you even make them? How do you even make a transformer out of them? Well, we got to figure that out, don't we? So that's kind of what the video is. Now, we know some of them already, and we're going to start very easy, and the easiest one is the one that they've already confirmed. Yes, the Fallen is going to be a tank. Micronus is going to be a tank. Big shock. I know. I couldn't believe it either. But no, that's pretty much typical for the Fallen. Especially since this is based on the Dreamwave version, the original depiction of the Fallen. No surprise that it's going to be a tank just like its titanium predecessor. The other one we already know is the one we already have, and that's Vector Prime. So for Vector Prime, he's a spaceship. We know the Vector really only has one design. And it's a really good design, so let's not meddle with it. We've already got that toy. That's the first prime we checked off the list. The one that kind of inspired today's discussion and debate is Prima. So Prima is supposed to be like the prototypical prime, like kind of like he's the original Matrix bearer. So he kind of has the elements of Optimus and the more familiar primes before him kind of baked into his DNA a little bit. Now, the leak that we got is reportedly a toy for Prima. Now, as typical with a lot of these really weird early leaks, they've done things to kind of meddle with the toy, or the toy they got was incomplete, one or the other. They've done things to obfuscate what the toy is, which makes it more difficult, but we do kind of know it's Prima. And the takeaways from the photos are two wheels in the back of each of Prima's legs, and this kibble arrangement on the back, which clearly does show a windshield, but more importantly, below that shows some sort of extra panel which looks like it is hinged to fold downward. This, between the extra wheels and that, gives me the impression of that's going to be a truck. It's going to be some kind of ancient Cybertronian styled truck, but it's definitely seems like the way they're leaning. And if Prima really is like the prototype of the primes, that makes all the sense in the world. I would expect it to be more akin to like the Generations Orion Pax kind of truck, a lot sleeker and lower to the ground, not necessarily like a semi truck, but just like the general shape is there kind of vibe, right? At least that's what I'm hoping. That's what it feels like. The other one we already know is, ironically, the most mysterious of the primes, the 13th. The 13th is supposed to be mysterious, but in most fictions, the depiction is, it is Optimus Prime, but he gave up his divinity after the 13 split in order to join the normal Transformers on Cybertron. We've had an interesting revelation with that whole fiction. So, on the side of the Megatronus box, it shows statues of the primes, and you can see you can see Megatronus in there, you can see Liege Maximo, but you can also see a very familiar design, and that is Star Convoy. Now, we know from leaks that Star Convoy is going to be an upcoming Titan-class character. However, if it's going to be a Titan, if it's going to be like an Optimus Prime, but also going to represent one of the primes, that would mean they're using the Star Convoy design as the 13th Prime. Now, there is a different part arrangement. I presume that is to make the version, to make the 13th Prime distinct from Star Convoy. But it does feel like that's the direction they've gone in, which drastically changes Transformer fiction, by the way. It means that when Optimus Prime in the Japanese, Return of Convoy fiction, when he came back through the power of the Zodiac, that meant he didn't just obtain the most powerful form he had in G1, it means he was returned to his original divinity as one of the primes. That's kind of a major shift in the fiction. And yes, I'm calling Star Convoy his most powerful form. Don't tell me about Alternity. That's all extra superficial fluff that came after, and that weird Japanese everything is the same continuity kind of thing. So, no, that seems to be that direction. So, we need to figure out the rest of these, don't we? The other one that I think we can pair out pretty easily is Nexus Prime. I've already speculated on this channel multiple times. They seem like they're going to go for a mix of the upcoming aerial bots they'll be releasing next year, as well as the upcoming Combaticons. We know the aerial bots are 2025, but they're going to start in with Squindle and Vortex and then work their way into a full set for Onslaught later on. If you're going to replicate the subscription service version of the character, then you do need 2 aerial bots and 3 Combaticons, which seems like that's what it might be. But there is the other direction that they could take here. If they didn't want to go through, in order to release it that way, he would have to be, the 3rd combiner in that set. If 2025 is the aerial bots, 2026 is the Combaticons. Could you get away with an obscure one taking up so much of the toy line in 2027? I'm not necessarily sure you could get away with that, so this might be like a gift set thing if all of them were done like that. Or you could simplify it. You could release him as a leader class figure where the arms and legs just pop off to become the vehicles, that they're supposed to turn into, and then the torso would turn into a vehicle too. So you kind of have this duocon thing or overlord thing, but across 5 vehicles instead of 2. That would be the other speculation if they didn't want to do that. The only reason I hesitate on that idea is who would you retool that into? What else would you do that with? I mean, I don't even think you could pre-tool that into an Energon Optimus Prime unless it's Commander class. And I don't think they're going to do anything different with Commander class and Generations for a long time that isn't a Combiner torso. I think that's just going to be that size class for the next few years. So there's 2 different ways they could go about that. Either way, we know the vehicle modes it'll turn into, 5 of them. That leaves us with the ones where you kind of have to figure it out. What do you do with Alchemist Prime? So, okay, I mean, based on the name Alchemist, and even based on the fact that he's a bartender, the vehicle mode I came up with was a cement mixer. We've seen that as kind of a traditional chemist transformer vehicle mode, works for Mixmaster, and honestly wouldn't surprise me if this Alchemist was kind of a pre-tool for Quick Mix, who's one of those few G1 characters who still has not received any new toy. I could imagine that, in the similar way that Needle Nose eventually became, what's my brain thinking? Windsweeper. In a similar vein. That's not the, God, jeez. My brain is scattered. That's not even the example I was trying to come up with. The example I was trying to come up with was Quake, where you take Skullgrin and retool it so much that not only do you get a completely new toy, you also get 2 Target Masters thrown in. I think Alchemist could be worked the exact same way. Yeah, so this is where I start kind of going the 13 are very obscure characters for most everybody unless you are very deep into this fandom. Meaning that everything that we figure out from here on out needs to have some other use. Like they need to be a pre-tool of somebody else, or they need to be retooled from an existing toy, one or the other. Because, you know, otherwise, what else are you gonna do with them? Like, what else are you gonna do with half of these primes? Because they're so distinct in design, by intention. But no, if we move on from Alchemist, that brings us to another easy one, which is Alpha Trion. Or maybe it's not so easy, because there's actually two alt modes Alpha Trion has become very well known for. One is the spaceship, which tends to be his go-to when a toy just gets retooled into him. And the other one is a lion, which is how his original BotCon depiction was supposed to be, and it's how he was depicted most recently in Transformers 1. Okay, for reasons I'll explain later in this video, I do think he will be a spaceship again. I would even go so far as to say he might be a retool of Vector Prime, because they do share a lot of similarities, especially like the overall body type, the cape hanging down the back, whereas, you know, like you could fake that with like the solar sails on the vehicle mode. I mean, the only thing that stops me from thinking that is that'd be a retool of a retool, but Hasbro's done that lately, so wouldn't surprise me. Also, I think it's just kind of funny that once again Alpha Trion is denied his own mold. He's always a pre-tool or retool of somebody. Here's one that a lot of people brought up when we talked about the weaponizer gimmick, and that is Amalgamous Prime. If I'm remembering that right. Point being, as I Google TF Wiki to make sure I have actually gotten his name right, because I can never remember. Right. Okay, yeah, Amalgamous Prime. Okay, apologies. What do you do with him? So for those who don't know the fiction, those who did not watch my video going over the 13 primes, he's never been depicted properly in fiction, and his traditional form is supposed to be ever shifting and changing, you know, and it's supposed to be very amalgamous, right? That's the whole idea. What do you do with that as a toy? And a lot of people suggested the weaponizer gimmick because, well, then you could take them apart, put them back together, take them apart, put them back together, come up with alternate modes and different vehicles for yourself, which would be an extremely cool play pattern, except I feel like if you're going to use the weaponizer gimmick that heavily for his engineering, it's going to wear out very easily. Those 5mm pegs and ports, they're going to get loose on you. So I wanted something a little bit more solid, but still works. And here's the other idea people had, and I absolutely agree with. Pre-tool of RID Megatron. How cool would this be? And it makes sense. You know, that was the ultimate toy for fan modes, because, you know, he has so many parts built in, and his design was so admittedly generic in how all the engineering and alt modes worked. You could come up with just about anything, you know, like it was just a really good toy for just messing around with and coming up with stuff. I think that's perfect for Amalgamous. I think that would be a great use of him. I don't know how you get it out, because I would make that a commander class, so it has all the room and the budget it needs, but we will see. He's definitely going to be the most difficult one to pin down as far as transformation goes, but yeah, I think it's going to be a multi-changer. If not RID Megatron, then certainly a 6-shot pre-tool. One or the other. Here's the other one that's going to be difficult. Onyx Prime. Onyx is basically a winged centaur, and that's his robot mode. So what do you do with him? How do you turn him into a truck? How do you turn him into a truck? The answer is, I don't think you do. I don't think he's going to be any kind of traditional transformer, because his shape is so unique. There's no way you're going to be able to pre-tool, retool that into anything. You know, he is going to be literally his own beast. And that made me think, what else could we do with him? Like, what twist in this formula could there be in order to actually make Onyx work? And here's the thing, I know I'm budget limited on this one. I meant to look up the leak list of the primes to remember what size classes that all, the so far leaked ones were going to be at. But the one I remember is Onyx is a leader class. So I can't go crazy and make him commander or titan or anything to come up with something crazy. What I think they're going to do, and here's my bet for the alt mode, 2 beasts. I think he's going to be a lion and an eagle in order to form the lower and upper halves of his body. And that's me going off of 2 things. Number 1, it just makes his overall form make sense. But number 2, he's a lord of beasts. Like the whole thing. Like he is supposed to be like the original DNA of beast formers. So to have both a land and an air beast mixed in order to create his beast mode makes sense to me. And it also gives him and it's not the only time we've done this. Overlord has a leader class toy. He's the, splits in half. We know how he works. Same thing, but animals. I think that's how you accomplish that centaur mode. And I just think that would just be a cool figure in general. Again, I don't know how you reuse it. I don't think Onyx is one you do reuse. I think he's just going to be one of those one and done designs. Because what else is there? In a crazy wild world, I would imagine him as a Magnaboss pre-tool of some weird state. You have like the eagle and the lion can be the same, just different configurations, and then you have a replacement for Ironhide as a lower torso. Instead like a horse that transformer that kind of combines up. That's a wild theory. I don't think we're getting that. It's a leader class. I think it's going to be a mix mash of those two you see now. Micronus is really odd to pick. His whole thing is small. And like what do I glean from that? Like what do I do to pick an alt mode for a transformer whose whole thing is I represent the small stacks? I kind of thought about this, and I kind of thought like, okay, I think because Prima is going to be a truck of some kind, I started to realize and kind of reel this back in and go, we might see more normal vehicles. We might see like more normal road-based vehicles, and the primes are all going to have some variety to them when that comes across. So I started to think to myself, what do we not have yet? And what makes sense? Because what is the vehicle mode that all these small transformers inevitably get lumped into? And that would be a motorcycle. Or something akin to a motorcycle, since this is going to be ancient throwback Cybertronian, aesthetic. That just seems to be what all the little transformers get, right? From like live action depictions of RC, Ransack, motorcycle is just a go-to if you are the short stack transformer. And yeah, I mean, I think that's a little bit tame as a prediction, but I think it's safe. I think it's a safe one. How about we go with an unsafe one? Let's go with an unsafe one that I really don't know, and that is Solus Prime. She is going to have a difficult time because, we somehow have to get across the whole Forge Master aspect of her. So, need something big. And we need something that, kind of heavy duty. And preferably something involved in construction in order to kind of convey her, right? I came up with this thing. This is a pile driver. This is basically just a massive gravity hammer for construction purposes. It's a construction vehicle they've never done for Constructicons. I will tell you that. The only reason I think that might be weird is because, like, I can't remember if she's a year 1 or not. If she is, that means she would be a construction vehicle releasing the same year as all of these Studio Series Constructicons. That might get a little bit messy. Other than that, however, I think, that might be a safe bet. I definitely think she's going to be construction vehicle adjacent, right? Because you have to put some kind of builder creator aspect into her design. That might clash with our cement mixer ideas for Alchemist, but I don't really have a better option here. Quintus is where things start getting weird. Now, the Primes seem to be going with either their first or their most well-known depictions. So, like, a lot of the designs from the Covenant of Primus are kind of getting skipped in favor of things that look more familiar to fans in general. When it comes to Quintus, you have either the very tentacled one that's more reminiscent of the Quintessons, but you also have the brand new one, which is what you see here from Earthspark. And they're going with the most well-known depictions. That is the most well-known depiction of Quintus at this point. And I think that just avoids the whole, how do we get those spider legs into an actual vehicle mode? I think that just kind of avoids that a little bit. I started thinking like, okay, what don't we have? I don't think, I mean, I think we need some kind of land vehicle in here. We don't have anything close to a car yet. Not that Quintus strikes me as like a transformer who would turn into a car. However, we can at least play with that. I started looking up weird cars. What's a weird car that would make sense? Came up with this thing. That looks super, super weird. So I'm probably going to butcher this name. An Elica? E-L-I-I-C-A? Or Elisa? I don't know. It is an 8-wheeled electric car. So I've worked in the Quint part. No, I mean, well, not the Quint part, but like, that's 5, TJ. Good job. You've passed. I thought the 8 wheels worked because, you know, we're trying to convey like the tentacles or the little creepy legs, one or the other. I wanted to incorporate that to a vehicle mode. This seemed to do the job. I'm probably way off on this one. I'll be honest with you. Quintus is kind of giving me a loop here. I feel like he's going to be like that slot filler of like, what vehicle modes don't we have? We don't have any kind of car. He might also potentially be a jet of some kind. We don't have any, we have spaceships, but no actual jets. So this only leaves me with one, and it's probably the most difficult one, and that is Liege Maximo. Now, remember I mentioned that artwork on the side of Megatronus's box? Yeah, that also depicts Liege Maximo, and he is very much looking like Marvel G2 Liege Maximo. You know, much more, you know, humanoid in shape, because he's standing up, but he's got the horns, he's got the tentacle-y stuff. He's gonna be G2 style. He's gonna be his original depiction. That makes him exceptionally difficult to figure out an alt mode for. So what do? I feel like this is where I get to cheat a little bit. I feel like this is where you start getting monstrous. I feel like if anyone is going to have a more monstrous alt mode, it's going to be him. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be a 3-headed dragon or like a pre-tool of like a Cybertron Scourge or anything. But I do kind of expect him to be a lot more, you know, just a lot more of like a menacing creature than necessarily like a vehicle of some kind. Because frankly, I don't know how, I don't know how you get all those tentacles into a vehicle mode, but also I just feel like Liege Maximo, maybe even more so than Megatronus, needs to convey a lot of like fear and just a lot of like really intimidating design. And I feel like if he just turns into a car or a truck, that undermines it dramatically. So I'm kind of leaning toward monstrous beast for him, even though that kind of defies the whole like Onyx is the beast guy. I don't know what else you can do with him. It's going to be extremely interesting to find out. But that's going to do it. That's our 13 primes. Those are the guesses for the vehicle modes. I have no basis for any of this. I'm just shooting in the wind on this one. Feel free to leave your guesses in the comments below. And then, once all of this stuff inevitably leaks, this is one of those time capsule videos that you can go back to and either be, wow, TJ knew exactly what was happening, or TJ got all this so wrong. Either way, it's going to be fun for you guys later. So, until then, thank you very much for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.